Today we're going to talk about the table saw. The table saw is probably the machine that is the most versatile, allows you to do the most things, is the most common in most households. However, it is also the machine that causes the most injuries in industry. It is very important that you listen to these safety rules, you understand them, and you follow them. A very nice, tame machine can get very angry extremely quickly. I'm going to read through the safety rules. Number one, the guard may never be removed when operating a saw. This is the guard, and it is here to protect you from the blade. Under no circumstances should you take it off of the saw. Number two, know that the operator may turn the saw on and off. The power button is here in the front. You are the one that turns it on. You are the one that turns it off. Number three, the miter gauge is always used to cross-cut a board. The miter gauge is this, and it is used when cross-cutting or cutting across the grain. Number four, a fence is used to rip a board. Ripping, remember, is cutting with the grain, and this would be a fence right here. Number five, a push stick must be used when ripping a board less than 4 inches. A push stick looks something like this, and it allows you to push the board through the saw without getting too close to the blade. Number six, the blade should never be higher than 1/8 of an inch above the workpiece. To check for this, you can place your board next to the blade when it is not running and when it is not plugged in. There's a wheel in the front here. By turning it clockwise, we'll raise it. By turning it counterclockwise, we'll lower the blade. Ask me when sawing a board longer than 2 feet. Number eight, never back a board out of a cut. If you start backing a board out of a cut, say for example you're cutting the wrong edge or the wrong end, and you decide to stop, there is a good chance that that board is going to get twisted in the blade, get caught by the blade, and get sent out in a kickback, sending the board out at about 30-40 miles an hour. It is very scary, and there's not much you can do about it if it happens. Number nine, never use the miter gauge and fence at the same time. Under no circumstance would you want to use the miter gauge on this side, the fence on this side, and start slicing this piece of wood. The reason being is the piece of wood between the fence and the blade would be just like a ball in a pitching machine. It would get wedged in there, and it would come shooting, flying out. Alright, again at about 30-40 miles an hour. It's very scary when this happens. It's very intimidating when it happens. Obviously, you would not want to adjust the depth of cut when the power is running. Number 11, don't remove scrap until the blade has stopped. Number 12, fingers should never be closer than 4 inches from the blade. 4 inches is the rule for all of our machines. You'd never want to be closer than 4 inches with your hand to the moving cutting object. 13, keep your fingers and thumb out of the line of the blade. Because of the fear of kickback, you always need to know where your hands are, and you want to make sure that they are not directly in line with the blade in case there is a kickback so it doesn't pull your hand in. 14, never stand in front of the blade. If I'm cutting here in line of the blade, and if there's a kickback, I'm going to get hit by that board. I would much rather step to the side and let the board go flying by me versus hitting me directly. 15, when ripping, you always want to measure to the nearest tooth on the blade. If you look at a blade, it has what's called set. Now, set means one tooth goes this way and one tooth goes this way. That is why a saw does not bind when it cuts. It is also the reason for why a saw becomes dull. If a saw blade loses its set, which is like this, and it becomes like this, what will happen is is eventually the board will start binding and it will not cut real well with the blade. When you are setting the fence for a rip, again cutting with the grain, you carefully measure, it is unplugged, you measure to the tooth that is pointing to the fence. Alright? You can then lock it down using the lever in front here, and the fence should be in place. Now, there's more to it than that. It is very important that the fence is locked parallel. And sometimes on older machines, such as this one, the fence does not always lock parallel. It is not safe to assume that it is parallel. So you're going to check. And what I usually do to check that is I'm going to measure the distance from the fence to the miter gauge groove. Okay? In this case, it is just shy of 10.5 inches. I'm going to measure over here and see what the measurement is. This time it's right at about 10.5 inches. So I'm going to give it a light tap on this end. This end is clamped. This end is kind of free spool. Tap this end until it is the right depth. I'm now ready to perform my rip. I will place my jointed or X-edge against the fence. It is very important that I have a straight or machined edge against the fence. Otherwise, my board could twist or rock along that fence, causing a kickback. Again, kickback is your biggest fear here on this machine. To plug this in, you're going to line up the 3 fingers. It's a plug different than what you're used to. 220 volts. Make sure you don't touch the prongs. Alright, here we go. When I turn on the saw, I step to the side, left hand, right here, right hand with my thumb behind, right here. I'm going to carefully push my board through the blade. Get this hand out of the way. If possible, have a partner here to help catch your board. Otherwise, just simply push it through and let it fall on the ground. Any scrap is removed after the blade is moving. Again, for the reason, if whoever removes the scrap accidentally hits the blade with it, that blade could grab that board and send it flying. This circle saw is dangerous, but it also does an excellent job cutting, as you just witnessed. Number 16, boards less than 8 inches long or 3 inches wide may not be cut on the table saw. If they get too small, there's a chance that it's going to twist or turn when going through the blade, and that would be another cause for kickback. 17, ask me for help if you're unsure of sawing procedure. 18, never freehand a cut. Under no circumstances would I want to see you just simply cutting through the saw like this. Alright, you twist that board just a little bit, and it's going to kick back, or try to kick back. 9, know where your fingers are at all times. 19. And number 20, never cut angles on the table saw. Table saw likes to cross cut. It likes to rip. It does not like to cut angles. Alright? Now I'm going to demonstrate cross cutting. Again, you use the miter gauge, place it in the groove. Place the X-edge against the miter gauge. You actually pull the board towards you with one hand. The right hand is going to push the miter gauge through the blade. I like to line it up without it running. Turn it on. You never want to pull the board back through the blade. If you let it move just a little bit, you can catch the blade and again have kickback. So we always want to be thinking kickback. Now that the blade is stopped, I can bring it back, and as you can see, I have a nice squared end, or end that is perpendicular to the edge. Table saw, once again, can be a friend, but it can also be a foe. Respect this guy, and it will be your friend.